Next up here on 99.9 The Fan, Paul Ihander with you, Graham Hill as well, and joining us is the sage himself. Been sitting for hours and hours and hours and letting things simmer. Now that we have word that Mack Brown is going to no longer be the head coach at the University of North Carolina and lead its football team, Tommy Ashley of Inside Carolina. Now that things have settled down a little bit, it's soaked into your skin. Your immediate thoughts on Mack Brown no longer being part of the program?
Whew, it's been an interesting few weeks since that JMU game, when we sort of had all that drama and all. But I've been around a long time, and I started doing Inside Carolina back when Mac was still in 1.0 at North Carolina. So it's going to be a big difference. But I think that everybody looking with clear eyes and clear conscience can see it was time to make a change, and Bubba Cunningham and North Carolina have done that. So it's going to be probably a quick process to get somebody hired, given the timelines that college football is under. But it's been a wild ride. It's going to continue to be one, I guess.
Tommy, let me ask you this, just because I've been seeing a lot of the fan base talk about this on social media, and that's the timing of this decision before the season finale against NC State. Do you feel this was appropriate, or could have been handled differently as far as the announcement?
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised it was today, here before the NC State game. I assumed we would hear something, definitive one way or another after that game. But Graham, given the timeline that I mentioned just a second ago, with signing day on December 4th, the portal opens on December the 9th. You just simply can't wait. And, um, you know, there's not much you can do, or not much reason to do it really early in the season, because then you put the team and the program in a bind. But when you get at this point, we're at the end of November, and a lot of things are in motion, and you have to have them in motion to be able to have a team coming up. So I'm a little surprised it was today, but not surprised it's now, if that makes any kind of sense.
The Mac Brown 1.0 and now the Mac Brown 2.0, and the news comes down essentially 6 years after he accepted the chance to be Mac Brown 2.0. How does he go down in program history? There was a lot of warm and fuzzy that came with Mac Brown, an easy charm, perhaps, that came with a lot of players and parents, and certainly initially with donors. But in a new world, charm and charisma can only take you so far. So when he goes, in terms of we speak about Mac Brown, say 5 years from now, how will we speak of him? Will we speak of him well, or will it come with a mixed bag?
I think it depends on who you talk to. Are you talking to the hardcore football fans that expect 10, 11, 12 wins a season? Or are you talking to the average everyday fan that has realized that North Carolina football kind of is what it is, and that's a 7, 8, 9 win program over the course of my lifetime? Probably a little less than that, actually. But I think when you look at Mac Brown, everything he's done, especially, and I'm talking purely off the field program type stuff right now. When you look how he navigated, COVID, how he navigated Tylee Craft's passing and all, I mean, he was absolutely the right person to be able to handle that, given his history. You mentioned the charisma and all that. Some people kind of, buck up against somebody with so much charisma and, salesmanship or whatever. But I think it was the right thing for North Carolina after the Larry Fedora era. We all know how it ended in '97, and there's forever going to be a debate as to how that all went down. But I think going to Texas was a no-brainer. How it happened and what was said maybe could have been handled different. But when folks sit back and look at Mac Brown 5 years, like you mentioned, I think you'll see an appreciative fan base, an appreciative university community for what he was able to accomplish, not necessarily wins and losses wise, but to make North Carolina football relevant. I mean, Inside Carolina breaks some news this morning, and I turned on the radio on my way home, and everybody's talking about North Carolina football, and that's, there is no bad press, right? Unless it's really bad. And this kind of stuff gets Carolina in the national discussion. And so overall, I think on the whole, Mac Brown has been a good to great thing for North Carolina. It's unfortunate that ultimately, though, as you guys know, the only thing that matters is the product on the field at the end of the day, especially in this day and age when money and revenue and all that's so important. So a change had to be made, but and you hope it's not a firing, it's a more civil parting of the ways or whatever, a mutual understanding, but it kind of is what it is. But I've enjoyed covering Mac both in 1.0 and in 2.0, and he'll be missed in Chapel Hill for sure.
Tommy, stick on the positives of Mack Brown's second tenure in Chapel Hill at North Carolina. I feel like one thing that you could contribute a lot to Mack Brown was repairing the relationships he had with the local high school coaches here in the state of North Carolina. It felt like Larry Fedora, the back half of his coaching tenure, had sort of gotten away with that. And when Mack came back, that was one of the big points of emphasis that he wanted to establish during his second time. And then also, I feel like North Carolina nationally has just gotten a lot more primetime television matchups, and I'm sure that probably helps that he had a relationship with ESPN. But in this day and age of college football, all you hear about is revenue, ratings nationwide. How do you think this news coming out changes North Carolina on a national scale to the media?
Yeah, I don't know. That's something that remains to be seen. Do they hire a coach that can continue to build the program and take that next step? Your point about Mac and the high school, especially North Carolina high schools, is a great one because I live in an area where high school football produces some solid to good to great players, and to see how it was under Larry Fedora, and I'm not trying to throw Coach Fedora under the bus by any means, but it is what it is. Those relationships were damaged or just not cultivated enough is what Mac was able to do across the state. He had the gravitas, he had the respect, and he knew how to talk to people and make you feel like you're the only person in the room when you're just a high school coach who's a very important job, but a high school coach in whatever small town or county in North Carolina. So I think that's a huge aspect of it. On the national scale, I think North Carolina is always going to be relevant now. Especially with, you got conference expansion. Those conversations never end, and North Carolina's a prize jewel in that. And I think Mac's ability to head the program has helped with that. And so I'll see, you're only as relevant as what you did today or yesterday. And you can be irrelevant the next day if you don't produce. So Carolina's going to have to make a good, solid hire, and prove that they're all in on college football. And then the national people will follow because everybody, whether you love it or hate it, is going to pay attention to North Carolina if they're relevant, if they're good. And that's the next step for this program.
Tommy Ashley, Inside Carolina, joining us here next up on 99 The Fan. Paul Ihander, Graham Hill with Tommy here. And Tommy, so let's talk about, now that we've done chopping up Mack Brown, let's talk about North Carolina, the football as a program as a whole. Moving forward, making the right hire, does North Carolina now move into the echelon of Power Four conferences who will now suddenly have shorter leashes because the currency in the new landscape is about wins and losses, especially now that you're paying for them?
Yeah, I think that's just the way this ship is moving. Mac talked about that Monday in his press conference about, you lose and you're fired. And I think given the amount of money, like you mentioned, is you can't afford to be bad in football. Whether or not you support college football, whether or not, the admin supports college football, whatever, you cannot afford to be bad because that money is just so great, especially where Carolina is currently in the ACC. Teams in the SEC can just be middling because they're going to get paid regardless. But at Carolina, they need to be good. And so you're right, the leashes are shorter. The issue that I would like to see Carolina avoid, and we talked about this, if folks are on the Inside Carolina, we had a reaction show at noon today, and Jason Staples made the point of these overwhelming buyouts that these coaches have. Say I hire Graham Hill to coach my team, and I pay him $8 million a year. Well, that's one thing. But if I pay him $8 million a year for 10 years, and that's guaranteed money, and then he stinks after 2, then we're on the hook. And that is where you get in trouble. It's why currently North Carolina is the only major school with a coaching vacancy, even though some of the big names of schools have been bad because they can't afford to get rid of people with the money aspect. So I think Carolina is, whether folks like it or not, and I think the hardcore football people love it, Carolina's in that mix now, and Carolina's going to be on that train where it's win or leave. And the only question is, how much money do we pay you not to coach if you don't win?
It's like I always joke about. There's no better job in the history of employment right now than a fired college football coach, because you pretty much just get to sit around and you get a bunch of money flown into you. You pretty much just brush up on your skills before you get, or hopefully move to another coaching position. Speaking of coaching jobs, when you look at this vacancy now for UNC's football program, Tommy, to me, you covered North Carolina for a very long time. Am I wrong for saying that they're going to try to go for somebody that embodies the Carolina family? Let's say a Jeff Saturday, who's somebody that comes to my mind immediately as far as taking over Mack Brown's coaching tenure in Chapel. Just what are your thoughts on who the next hire might be?
I don't, and I love Jeff Saturday, but I don't think Carolina needs to go somewhere and get somebody that's proven that they can win college football games, or they can be a big, important player in winning college football games, whether it's a high-level offensive or defensive coordinator, whether it's a G5 coach. So I think the challenge Bubba Cunningham has is, you talk about the Carolina family. Well, that football family is not as deep as that basketball side is. And so I think Carolina goes in a way, family or not, quote unquote family or not. And I think, quite frankly, it could be a complete house cleaning, but we'll see, because it is Carolina, and we know how they like to clean to the past, to put it simply. So I think you're looking at a coach who's got a proven track record, or comes from one of those big trees in college football, whether it's a Saban tree or whatever, that has proven that they can do it on the biggest level. And, you can't afford to take a shot and miss, to the point earlier about the financial side of it. And I think, and another thing with the portal, with signing day and all that, a big name or a solid name that carries some weight with a resume is the only thing Carolina needs to be looking at here. And then you take what you get there, and then you can move forward and not have a massive dip, with roster management and all those type things. So I'm looking at a high-level defensive or offensive coordinator, probably lean towards the defensive side of the ball, or a high-level G5 coach that is proven every step of the way that they can coach a winning team. And I think that's going to be very important for North Carolina.
Power 4 job coveted for sure. Tommy Ashley, Inside Carolina. Tommy, appreciate the insight. Always great to visit with you.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. It's been fun this season. And like we always say, there is no off season. So maybe one day we'll all get to relax. But now's not the time. Thanks, fellas.
I appreciate you.